listening to PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. This is your host, Tim Link, and I'm so glad you're joining us today. My guest today is award-winning multi-book author Alan Anderson, and Alan's going to be talking to us about his recently released book, A Dog Named Leaf, the hero from heaven who saved my life. So we'll be interested to learn more about the book, learn more about Leaf, and also find out what other things Alan's got up his sleeve, as he always is active in helping the animals. So we're going to have a good time. Everybody sit back, listen, and relax, and we'll come right back after these commercial breaks. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
Sit. Stay. We'll be right back after a short pause. Well, 4 to be exact. Petco, where the pets go. Petco, where the pets go.
Pet Life Radio has tail-wagging, fur-flying, fabulous deals for our listeners from Petco. Get $6 off your order of $60 or more and up to 40% off the entire Petco site. That's right. But that's not all. Because you're a Pet Life Radio listener, you'll also get free shipping on your order of $49 or more. $6 off, up to 40% off, and free shipping from Pet Life Radio and Petco. To get these awesome deals, go to PetcoDeals.com. That's PetcoDeals.com.
Petco, where the pets go.
I'm not much of a reader, but I do wish I were more well-read.
There are so many great books coming out. I wish I could find a way to keep up.
Audible.com makes it easy to stay well informed and catch up on your reading simply by listening. Audiobooks from Audible turn downtime into uptime. You'll be more productive and become well-read.
Now I'm able to catch up on all the great books I've been wanting to read.
With Audible, I feel smarter.
Pet Life Radio listeners, try Audible.com now and get your first 30 days of Audible Listener Gold membership plan free. And get a free audiobook. Choose from over 100,000 titles. To get this great deal, go to audibledeals.com. That's audibledeals.com.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. This is Tim Link, your host, and joining me now is multi-book author Alan Anderson, and he's here to talk to us about his recently released book, A Dog Named Leaf. Alan, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really glad I'm here.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I love everything that you and your wife, Linda, put together. And this one's a little bit of a twist, a little bit different than some of the most recent books you guys have put together. So tell us a little bit about A Dog Named Leaf.
Well, we adopted this wonderful dog from the shelter when he was about a year old. He was abandoned. And after he was adopted, we found out that he had a lot of issues. Of course, many shelter dogs don't have issues. They just blend right into the family, but Leaf did, and we had to make a decision to stick with him no matter what, and we did, and we were determined that he was going to become a family member through our love and our patience and our spending time with him so he could get used to people. Apparently he had been abused prior to being dumped at the shelter, and he had all sorts of issues with being touched, and kind of like that type of dog that just was scared and really didn't like people and was always afraid of the hands and the feet. And I guess it was all kind of oriented towards what might have happened prior to him being dumped at the shelter by whoever did. He was abandoned, and so we brought him home, and we started a journey together, him and I. We started a journey of healing. That we both were going through some incredible crises in our lives. Him from his year-old past, which really affected him deeply, and me going through what would be considered life-threatening medical problems after we adopted him. So him and I became very much partners in achieving whatever we could each day in order to get through it and sort of help each other through it all. And I was really amazed through it all how special he was developing into a dog that was more of a companion, but more than that, even more of a partner. You know, like two guys together facing the battles of life and ultimately winning.
Absolutely. Now, I have to ask you on that front, looking back on it, and I'm sure we'll cover some of it in the book, but how do you view that? Do you view that going into it, you were helping him out and bringing him into your family? Or now looking back on it, does it look more like maybe he's helped you out and maybe that was his purpose?
Well, that's exactly right. He was definitely having a purpose. And when we adopted him, it was very unusual because he was kind of a black spot that was already gone from the cage in the shelter. And somehow, some way, he came back, and we were able to look at him and talk to him and bring him into a room. And even then, there was a lot of hesitancy on my part because I had just lost a wonderful, about 4 or 5 months earlier, a wonderful pet that I had for many years, a yellow lab who has just adored me and everything I ever did. So it was like I was betraying her in order to adopt another dog. But we adopted him. And when he came into our lives, he was as I said, he was a wreck. He was just never been in a house. He didn't know anything about bathroom training or anything like that. He was always growling and always nervous and always howling. And initially, I was basically taking him out 3-4 times throughout the night, winter nights. It was cold, and trying to get him accustomed to living in a home. And he would still howl. He couldn't sleep. He was nervous. This was week after week, day after day. So I was bringing him into my room and holding him against my chest and just holding him close to my heart so he could hear the heartbeat and he could slowly fall asleep. And finally, he started resting. And that's the way he slept for a long time on my chest while he was slowly becoming and developing trust. Well, through this whole process, I discovered that I had an unruptured brain aneurysm. I was getting dizzy, and I was having dizzy spells, and I went to the doctor. At Linda's Assistance, you probably know that often spouses and people who care about you insist on things that maybe you did not initially do yourself.
Looking out for your own best interest, that's all it is.
It is. But it's funny, isn't it, how sometimes that is the only way that a guy will go to a doctor. Well, I did, and I got some tests, and got a call one day at work, and he said, well, Al, you have an unruptured brain aneurysm, and you're going to have to get it taken care of. Well, I was healthy up until then, and I thought, I had a whole future ahead. We were writing books, we were sharing stories, we were doing all the things that we really wanted to do, in addition to my regular day job. And my regular day job had a need for a lot of brain power with computer analyst type work and trying to get software systems working for different places around the country. So it's all very much high stakes when it comes to making this brain continue to work properly and not have any problems. And we just adopted Leaf a few months earlier. He was still a wreck, but we were slowly getting him to become more and more a family member, even though there was a baby steps doing that. Well, I discovered this, and I basically had an emotional breakdown thinking, oh my God, a broken brain? What future do I have? Even with brain surgery, according to the research, there would be diminished functionality. There would be all sorts of things that I would have to live with the rest of my life. And, after a while, I was in the hallway, and when I first discovered it at work when he called, and it was pretty deserted, so I just had a few minutes of self-pity and a reaction to it. And then I thought to myself, well, if I'm having this kind of emotional reaction, and of course I thought about Leaf howling. I felt like howling to the air like he did all the time. Thought about my father and his stroke and the brain damage that the stroke caused, and therefore him not being able to do for himself, which I never wanted to be in that position, and now it looks like there might be a possibility. So I was in the hallway, had a few moments of self-pity, and then I thought, well, if I had this reaction, my God, what would Linda think?
Mm-hmm.
She'd probably just totally break apart and fall apart, because I always viewed her as someone that would cry, and I would never do what to do with someone that would cry over bad news. Like, it's not really all that terrible, but to me it really was, so I didn't know what to say in order to reduce that kind of emotional reaction. So I did think after a few minutes, well, I got to get myself together. I got a conference call in a few minutes. I got to get myself together. I got to be there for Belinda. I got to be there for Leaf. I got to put myself together. So I thought to myself, as silly as this sounds, I thought to myself, well, what would Spock do?
A little mind meld action there?
Yeah, a mind meld, or maybe research, or maybe logical thinking of what next steps would be, and all the things that you would do without all the emotional displays.
I think you've got your next book there, Alan. What would Spock do?
Oh, God. So I went back to the office and sat through the conference call, and of course it went really well because I didn't talk very much that time. So I went back to my office, did research, started doing research. And I realized the internet is no place to go when you're trying to find good news. You type in those words and they come back with all these devastating type scenarios and stories and people that had surgery, even if it's unruptured, even the surgery's caused issues and problems and strokes and all sorts of issues that people live with for the rest of their lives. Well, I thought to myself, well, I'm going to have to tell Linda, or maybe I don't. Maybe I can convince her to go visit her parents. And then I would just have brain surgery, and then she would come home and I'd tell her about it.
Yeah.
And that would be, so I It actually crossed my mind. I thought, well, I really don't want to deal with this husband-wife thing where I have to help her get through the emotional, frightened aspects of being emotional over this, the possibilities. But I finally came to the point where I was going to go ahead and write a document, maybe a one-pager. I thought to myself, it's going to be an overview of what it is, options, and of course all the best-case scenarios that I found on the internet without any of the negative stuff. And I would call it a fact sheet, and I would present it to her, and that would be something that we could just move into the discussion without any emotional displays by her. Well, I did it. It was really beautiful. It was just a beautiful document. It had everything in there without a lot of the bad stuff. And I presented her that evening, and she looked at it, and she looked at me. And of course, Leif was sitting there, and he was trying to, I don't know if he was amused, but he was sitting there watching us. And she looked at me and she said, "You have a brain aneurysm. You're going to have brain surgery, and you gave me a memo?"
Well, you're a writer, after all. Come on.
Well, yes. I mean, I thought it was a beautifully constructed fact sheet, but she really viewed it as a memo, as just something that is going to be passed off, and you read it. So she started having her emotional reaction, and I did all the right things after that, after keeping quiet, which was probably the best thing for me to do. I held her hand, and we talked about the future and all that. So it worked out all right. Well, through this process, of course, Leif was getting more and more next to me all the time. He was always there. He was always my companion. He was protective. It was almost like he was made a job of it to keep me going, even though he may not understand fully the extent of my medical thing that I was facing, but he saw a black cloud of some kind, some sort of emotional cloud that was now enveloped the home and Linda and me, and he was going to be a team player. He started really working hard at it. It was so sweet. One of the things that was interesting about him is that, we began going to different places and dog parks. This is like weeks prior to the surgery and scheduled surgery, so I would begin, really taking him out more and doing more things with him as I had been previously, but I wanted to make sure that he had a lot of activity to keep his mind off of our issues or my problems. And it was fun watching him grow and watching him become stronger and more oriented towards people. Just one funny thing, we were walking down the street one day on the sidewalk, and a lady came up and lurched at him, and he growled. Of course, people aren't really supposed to lurch at dogs. They're supposed to be very careful with their hands and making sure that the dog sniffs and is okay with it, but she didn't know any better, so she backed off and kind of moved away quickly. I put him in my car, and we were going to go to the dog park just to get him to exercise some because the walk wasn't doing it. And I lectured him. I said, "Leif, that lady was nice to you. She wanted to pet you. She really liked you. Why did you growl? This is unacceptable." I was talking to him like he was a little child.
Right.
And he was yawning and looking out the window, and he looked at me. He's Cocker Spaniel kind of breed that we adopted. And so he had that look about him that he was just not going to listen. And I said, "What I want you to do, and this is really important, what I want you to do today is I want you to be nice to somebody. Just out of your own will, you do something that's nice for somebody. That's just what I want." And I, of course, laid it on thick. And he still looked like he was bored, not listening. But we did go to the dog park, and I let him out, and we went into this park. It was a smaller park, this one we went to. And, I noticed down across the park there was this older man sitting on a bench throwing a big yellow tennis ball for a kind of white, fluffy dog to chase. But the dog really didn't want to chase it, even though he would try. And the ball was so big. And he was older and tired, and he didn't want to have to walk all the way back. He tried to one time and brought the ball back and then threw it again. And this time he wasn't going to go after it because it was just way too much work. Leif was watching this. And this is after the lecture. Leif was watching this and ran over down to find the tennis ball, grabbed it in his mouth, walked it back to the man, dropped it at his feet, and he looked at me as if saying, "See, I can be nice."
Excellent. So that goes my theory. We've talked about this before. I always say, talk to your animals. They understand you and see what you want them to do, visualize it, and they do it. And that's great confirmation that Leif understood exactly what you're talking about.
It was. And, to put icing on the cake, the older man looked at me and in his gruff voice says, "Your dog is nice." It's like reinforcing that whole concept that he was a nice dog. He just didn't like being lurched at. But it was so perfect, the lecture, and then seeing that happen.
Absolutely. As Leaf coyly sticks his tongue out at you, I can see.
He did too, didn't he? I remember that now, where his tongue was actually hanging out. I thought he was just a little warm.
There you go. Now you know it. All right, super. We're going to take a quick little commercial break here, and we'll come back with Alan Anderson, talk a little bit more about a dog named Leaf, and I want to talk to him about his writing styles and some of the things he does there as well. So everybody stay tuned. We'll come right back. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
Sit. Stay. We'll be right back after a short pause. Well, 4 to be exact.
Every pet is unique. Maybe they're gray in the muzzle, yet young at heart. Maybe they're growing out of the puppy stage and into their paws and ears. Or maybe they're just trying to maintain a more girlish figure. At PetSmart, we have the right food for your pet at a great value for you. PetSmart. Be better together.
Go to PetSmartDeal.com and save up to 30% on awesome gifts for the pets and pet people in your life. Toys, collars, leashes, PetSmart gift cards, treats, and more. Go to PetSmartDeal.com today. PetSmartDeal.com.
Dyson.
The new Dyson Animal Vacs are powerful bagless upright vacuums for homes with pets. Air muscle and radio root cyclone technology generates the strongest suction power to powerfully remove dust, dirt, and pet hair from the home or car. To order your Dyson Animal Vac, go to DysonDeals.com. DysonDeals.com to order your Dyson Animal Vac today.
Dyson. Music to your ears.
Welcome to Sassy Seniors, a show about our fabulous older dogs and cats. I'm your host, Kelly Jackson. I wanted to create a show to really showcase our senior pets. And, as the human population ages and lives longer, of course, so are our wonderful pets. But many of us with aging pets, it's so interesting. We have a tough time realizing or really admitting that they are seniors. So, in a way, I kind of like to think of our senior pets as wise puppies. What do you think about that? Be sure to join us for another edition of Sassy Seniors. And remember, celebrate your senior pets.
Every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.
Let's talk pets.
Let's talk pets
On Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. It's your host, Tim Link, and I'm here with multi-book author Alan Anderson. Talk to him about his recently released book, A Dog Named Leaf, The Hero from Heaven Who Saved My Life. Now, Alan, I wanted to say, obviously, you and Linda have written some fantastic books over the years and a lot of healing books. Wouldn't you say this is a little bit of a slight departure from some of the things you've written in the past?
It certainly is. Many of our books in the past have been anthologies. We've collected amazing stories from incredible people around the country and the world, and we would present them in a book like Angel Dogs or Angel Cats or Dogs with a Mission or Horses with a Mission, and our publisher would we go through the whole process, and it would be published. And some of the stories in the books would be our personal stories, but not a lot, maybe one or two on occasion. So the anthologies were out there, and we were sharing them, and it's amazing the results of that. People would read these stories to their kids. They read one at a time at night to have something uplifting to read. It just brought a whole element to a person's life that maybe they would not have if they weren't, enjoying incredible stories about animals and how they affect people in such amazing, beautiful ways. So this book is different. And I have to tell you, and probably you know this, and probably some of your guests that you've had in the past know this, the moment you write about yourself, a lot of things change. A whole book about personal stuff about me and Leaf.
Yeah, and how are you experiencing that change? Do you think it's a change from within or responses from your fans? Expand on that a little bit.
Well, as a private person, so to speak, and feeling very safe about sharing other people's stories and really promoting and getting it out there, and then all of a sudden, this private person, people are asking questions after reading certain sections of the book about what I've been through with the brain surgery and with other aspects of that. Also, the emotional displays. Usually men aren't so ready to share the fact that they had an emotional reaction to news. Mm-hmm. And, they're brave and strong and capable. It's like you almost have to, and Leaf and I decided that about 2 or 3 years ago, I decided, I was going to begin writing this book. And then Leaf got very sick, and I got very depressed. It was way too close to the actual event. So we decided, as a team, him and I, that we were not going to face this project yet. And our publisher that wanted to publish it went ahead and agreed. That was fine with them. And we just weren't ready. It was too painful, too close. And of course, he didn't want to have to go through all the stuff where the world knows what bad a dog he was initially in order to have, I know this sounds silly, but in a way it's not, because, in my mind, he has as many feelings and emotions and ideas and strategies as most people do. So it's not exactly completely out of the ordinary.
Absolutely. And sometimes you want to air the dirty laundry when it's the right and appropriate time.
Exactly. So about a year and a half ago, we started the project again. And he didn't become sick, and I didn't become depressed, and we were working to achieve it. But in the process of writing it, in order for there to be, make it an interesting story, I had to put in a lot of things that actually happened, and also tone down some things that happened but were not necessarily part of the storyline that allowed people to actually turn the page and be interested in what happened next. And we did it. We wrote, and we sort of looked at each other, and I remember saying, and I know how this is such a cliche, I said, Leaf, we're going to have to man up and do this. We want to share this story. We want to get it out there. We want people to know how special that human-canine relationship can be, almost at a spiritual partnership level. It doesn't have to just be a friend or a dog in your house that loves you. You can go much, much further, and your experiences in life can be much, much more, less severe because you have someone at your side helping you through it.
Yeah, Alan, I was going to say, and I was going to commend you on that, because it's great to write a story about interesting animals in your life, and people enjoy that and get to know you and get to know the animal. But when you start talking about the spiritual side of it, I do believe that, obviously animals become part of our lives, they become part of our families, and they do tend to lead us on these spiritual paths or purposes that we have. Wouldn't you agree?
I totally agree. As a matter of fact, I think more often than not, when an individual has a relationship with a pet or an animal, or even going through nature and having that moment in a nature setting with an animal, it is very much spiritual in nature. It is far, far deeper than sometimes we want to get it credit for. Whether it be a moment where you have an understanding that life is more than just the daily grind that we all go through. It is much, much more. And having that connection with an animal on that level gives you that insight that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the book, which I did not know this, so I learned even more about you every time I talk to you, and read your material or read your books. But you were a police officer in the past. So I have to ask you, how do you go from being a police officer to writing and publishing and speaking on animals and spiritual content? How did that all come about?
Well, actually, my degree is in journalism, and I had planned on going into a journalistic career, but mostly I was looking at TV, and I had weather background, so I was looking at doing television work and all that. And after I got my degree, I had a motorcycle accident, which was really surface in nature, but it made me look like Frankenstein for a while. But now I say, well, how can I take advantage of this look? I want more writing material. Maybe I should try police work where people actually will pay attention to what I have to say, because I look this way, and then I can gather material. So I went ahead and did police work in Atlanta for 8 years. I thought it would be a year or two as I was healing and getting more writing material, but I really kind of liked the work. I liked helping people. So I went into police work, and we worked really bad areas, and I was always working. I got burned out on occasion, but I was doing what I thought was good to help those who needed something reasonable to come into their lives during times of crisis and during really bad times. Of course, lots of arrests, lots of stats for me, but there was one incident, and I remember going to this domestic, and there was this little boy on a couch with a little kind of mixed breed brown dog, not too big of a dog, but medium sized, and the dog was licking the child's tears off his cheeks as the man and woman in the apartment were yelling and screaming and being violent towards one another. So I came to this domestic, and of course I separated the two people, but I glanced over and I took a sort of a mental snapshot of that, because I always wanted and will always want to write about that relationship between people and animals. But I saw in that moment how incredibly important that was to that little boy, that might affect his entire life, because he had the protection and the love of that dog during the time when they were going through all that stuff in that particular apartment. So I did all the appropriate work as police work, but I remember, and it all turned out all right. But I remember going home that night, and I sat down on the carpet in the living room. It was late at night, and my kids and Linda they were already asleep. And our dog, a golden at the time called Prana, she came over and sat next to me, and sort of melted into my side, which relieved all the stress of the evening's work, all the pain, all the visuals that I had in my head of everything that I had seen and done. And she just took it all away just by being that loving, unconditional creature that she was, very much on a spiritual level. It wasn't just an emotional thing, but it was very much a total, complete, I'm here for you no matter what. Just let your worries just dissolve away. And it was just a beautiful moment. So those two things helped me understand that my destiny and my work that I want to do is to write about that relationship. I want people to know through story how important that is for each of them if they want to live the most fullest life that they could possibly live. Without that animal companion, without that moment in nature, without any of that, their lives are just basically less than what it could have been if they allowed that to be part of their life.
Yeah, huge. That's great. That's just and you do a great job with it with the book as well as all the other writings you do. It's isn't it amazing how those moments in time, and especially when it involves an animal, when they come about, how it just shifts our life totally.
Oh yes, absolutely.
That's amazing. Now, Alan, I noticed on the you've got a new publishing house for the book, and I'm assuming you got new representation. Can you tell me a little bit about that process, just from a writing aspect of how did that come about? You don't have to go into all the details, but how's that process been different from maybe working with the same publishing house for quite some time? Oh,
it is completely different. I mean, when you move to a different publisher, and they're wonderful people. Everyone has just been very helpful. It's just different in every way because you're used to working with a particular publicist or working with an editor and how they do things. The editor at the other publishing house would have added about at least 20% more to the book when it came to texture and adding elements to the writing. I had a whole bunch. I turned in a book based on what she recommended with the texture and with a lot of other elements to the story. And then when I turned it into our new publisher, the editor said, let's tell the story.
Which could have saved you a lot of time and if you would have known that ahead.
But it added to the book because there was some of it that was left in there. But it was definitely cutting it down, and moving things around. It was two different viewpoints, complete different viewpoints on the editorial side, and two different ways and methods of achieving marketing on the publicist side. So there's a whole range of things that I had to get used to, and also in developing relationships that could be drawn upon with the people that worked at the new publisher took time and effort. And the one thing we did with the original publisher, which I recommend to any writer, is to kind of make it so you can swing a trip to the publishing house and meet them in person, and then spend time with the editor and with the marketing director and with whoever else is there. And we never got a chance to do that with the new publisher, but we hope to do that one day just to go say hi and see who they are. We've been back and forth with a lot with email and regular mail and cards, but not necessarily that person to person. So that would really be helpful.
I think that's a very good point. And I was going to ask you, in the past when you've done that, at what stage did you do that? Did you go visit each and every time, or did you establish that relationship up front and it's stuck through all the years? It's funny you mention that because I was just thinking of that today, how impactful it is just to go by and, excuse my French, but as my dad would say, give him the old shit howdy. And, but, that really builds that relationship because they can put that face to it. And so what phase would you expect a writer or suggest to a writer to go visit their editors and publicists and people you're going to be working with?
The moment the contract is signed, I would go and initially have a talk. And just show them who you are and all the things that you plan on doing, because that's what publishers want. They want the author to do a lot of work, and if they see that, then they're going to put their efforts into it. I think it depends on who you're working with, but often they do. And at the very beginning, and don't do it every book because there's no need, because they already know you, unless there might be a possibility that maybe they're going to be going to the BEA or some other convention that you might be attending, so you get to see them there and schedule lunches or whatever.
Yeah. And I think through this industry, though, it's important as you build that relationship with a particular publishing house. Some of them tend to stick for quite some time. You'll work with the same group for quite some time over multiple books. But the industry, as you know, shifts quite frequently. So you may have to go back and visit multiple times.
That's right. Yes.
That's interesting. So, and how, touching upon the marketing aspect of it, I know you and Linda are master marketers through need or necessity, or just through been doing it through all these years. How has that helped, or how has that hindered working with a different publishing house and a different publicity group?
Well, it helped quite a bit because we knew what to expect and what was needed. So we were double-checking different things that might have fallen through the cracks otherwise. So it did help quite a bit. And, of course, it always helps because you know from previous campaigns, people, contacts, emails, phone numbers. So all that in a chart going to the publicist at your new publishing house would be beneficial because they would have the information that you have. And coming from the publisher, no matter how we would like to think differently, a press release or any kind of book or anything coming directly from the publisher has a little, in my mind, a little bit more of a punch to it than coming from the author. So that helps a little bit. And yeah, it did help quite a bit to have that experience because there were several things that we needed to make sure were completed that maybe would have fallen through the cracks because the people at the new place weren't accustomed to working with us and how we normally did things.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, some of the things that you and Linda have done over the years, it's not just your traditional show up to the local bookstore or gift shop type of thing. I mean, you're speaking and lecturing and talking to all kinds of different groups and organizations, and I would assume you would have fed off of that.
Yes, absolutely, and we're still working on that. It's a brand new book. It's just out early November, and we're still doing our thing, trying to make sure that people will get a chance to read it and see if they like it or not. I think they'll love it. We've gotten a lot of good feedback from people who have read the book and found it something they couldn't put down. I'm kind of surprised, actually. I mean, when I read it, I find it fascinating, but I'm kind of prejudiced, I guess.
Well, I always find it interesting as an author and writer that, you go into it with an idea of how you're going to write it and put it all together, and then after it's done and dusted and on the bookshelves, go back and read it again, because I think you do get some epiphanies and some things that you didn't realize even you put in the book, if you're anything like me. Well, that's great. We did a great job with it. Big kudos. Congratulations on all the early success. We'll look forward to seeing more and more about it as we move forward. And I do have to mention one thing before we get you off the line. I want to talk a little bit about your and Linda's efforts as founders of the Angel Animals Network. Explain a little bit more about the Angel Animals Network and what you guys are doing there.
Well, the Angel Animals Network is the sole purpose is to make sure that we have the capacity to share stories that people would like to be shared in newsletters, in columns, in books, in whatever method we can share them, because we want to uplift and have people look at animals in a more loving and spiritual way, and not necessarily just as property. And it's been ongoing, and the stories, people pay attention to a story. They'll read a story, and maybe their viewpoint will be changed because of the story. Statistics and all the things, they have their place, but not necessarily what we do. So angelanimals.net is where we have our website, and basically talks about where we're going to give lectures or speeches, and where we're going to do book events, and where we're going to be our newsletter subscription procedures, and what columns are out there and what articles that people might want to read when it comes to this topic.
Yeah, and it's a great site. I encourage everybody to take a look at angelanimals.net. It has virtually everything in there. And if you're going through a situation, a crisis, a spiritual awakening, something to do with your animal, there's usually stories on there where you won't feel alone or you won't feel like you're the only one out there. So it's a great place to go, participate in, and share your stories as well. So angelanimals.net, everybody take a look at that. Well, Alan, where can everybody learn a little bit more about Leaf and you, and where can they purchase the book, A Dog Named Leaf?
Well, adognamed.leaf.com is the website, and of course we're on Facebook, Twitter, we have LinkedIn, all the other social sites, and it's at all the chain and independent bookstores and all the online bookstores. So people, and it's in Kindle and Nook format now, so anyone who would like to purchase it in whatever method or way they read books, they certainly have access.
So everybody, pick up a copy of A Dog Named Leaf. Go to dognamedleaf.com. Like them on Facebook. Follow them. And, it's always exciting. So, Alan, big kudos. Congratulations on the book. It's a great read, and I always enjoy talking to you and find out what's going on. And let Linda know I said hey as well.
I sure will. She'll like that.
Well, we're coming to the end of the show today. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Also like to thank our sponsors and producers for making the show possible. To find out more about me, Tim Link, and the other guests I've interviewed on the Animal Rights Show, and to read my blogs, please visit PetLifeRadio.com, click on the Animal Rights icon, and you can download this episode as well as all the rest of them. Listen to your favorite authors and find out what's going on. And while you're there, make sure you check out all the other wonderful shows that we have and all the wonderful hosts on Pet Life Radio. That's PetLifeRadio.com. If you have any questions for me or any comments or ideas for the show, please email me. You can email me at tim@PetLifeRadio.com. It's tim@PetLifeRadio.com, and I'll be glad to answer your questions, entertain your comments, and bring on the people you want to hear most onto the show. So until next time, write a great story about the animals in your life. Share it in a blog, article, or in a book. And who knows, you may be the next guest on Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Have a great day.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.